So Julia Pimsleur, I'll give you the context to her. LXMI is because of her. I had read this book. It's called A $1 Million Woman. I picked it up, at the airport, and I hid. The back of the book was next to me. I didn't want people to see that $1 Million Woman title. But it's such an incredible book. Please pick it up. She's just released a second book called Go Big Now. Okay. The incredible thing about it is it embodies everything LXMI wants to do. It's on sisterhood. It is a laundry list of VCs that can help you, women-led VCs that can help you. It is a list of women entrepreneurs that have been successful. It is a list of strategies. She's so practical, it's not even funny, right? She just gives you a roadmap. And I remember not wanting that flight to land. I just wanted to read it, and I wanted to implement it, and then I wanted to go back, and I wanted to. So I have gifted that book to, I don't know, hundreds of women. But I really, really encourage you to read a book like that, because what it does is, there are books, there are issues on courage and branding and all of that. We just go into theory, right? But then there are
Sarita,
women like this who call out our bullshit also. Like, she calls out our bullshit, and she says, you know what, you women, you have to train. You have to learn. You have to do that, right? So I have never met her in my life, and I'm going to do that next time I go to New York. Maitri there, you see. From the first LXMI, we've been inviting her. It's the 5th one she has agreed. So a round of applause for Maitri Mittal. Like, really, resilience at its best. So yeah, so we're going to engage with a small conversation if we can connect. I can see her, but I can't see her on the screen.
No, so you'll have to stand there.
I have to stand there? What? Okay. Hi, Julia, can you hear us?
I can. Hello.
Hi, can we turn up the volume? So, Julia, you have a wonderful audience waiting to listen to you, and I gave them the context of how incredible you have been and how pivotal you've been to this exercise that we do called LXMI, Lakshmi, which is the goddess of wealth in India. So, welcome to LXMI. So, Julia, I wanted to... I'm sorry?
That I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me as part of the conference. Such impressive speakers you've had so far. I can't wait to watch the recordings. I wish I could be there in person.
Yes, we'll get you here undoubtedly. Julia, before we get on to your books, you mentioned in one of your books that you had a seminal summer where that's where you learned every nuance of being an entrepreneur, right? And can you talk to us about that experience, that moment when you kind of decided to commit to entrepreneurship?
Well, I think you're referring to a chapter in my book, $1 Million Women. It's called Diapering for Dollars. And it was my first real job. I was about 13 years old, and I went to work for a family who needed a babysitter for the summer. And I wound up being the last person who did not quit. Everyone else quit, because actually being a babysitter is a very tough job when you're a live-in. I was living in like an unfinished basement, and was just, didn't have control over my own schedule. The father worked on Wall Street, was kind of abusive, like saying mean things to me. It was not a fun summer. But I decided that I wanted to stay because I didn't want to be a quitter. So I was there from the day I finished school, this is 8th grade, up until the day before I went back to school. And while I watched all my friends quit, I found this kind of resilience I didn't know I had. And this is something I don't think you can teach in school. I think you have to just find it, right? This persistence, this resilience. I know part of your theme of this conference is, be courageous, just show up. I love that. So I continued to show up every day. And at the end, the mother gave me this really big tip, or what seemed like a really big tip at the time. It was a few $100s. And I think I was hooked right there on not so much entrepreneurship, but just making money and being able to control my own destiny by having that kind of persistence and grit.
You talk about, your book talks about, the title of the book is A $1 Million Woman, and it talks about why we should build businesses to scale. Like, for example, in India, 7 out of 100 entrepreneurs are women, and out of the 7, almost 80% are just small-scale businesses. Why the need for us to think big?
Well, financial freedom is really the last front of feminism. In America, we got the vote in 1920, but it wasn't until 1974 that the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed in America, which gave us the right to have a bank account or a credit card in our own name without asking a father or husband to co-sign. And that's not that many years ago, if you think about it. So we're still working on this in the US as well. 7 out of 100 is a pretty low number, but I will share that in America, while we do have 39% of small businesses are run by women, very few of us are scaling. Very few of us are getting to that $1 million mark. It's 2 to 3% of women in the US get to 1 million in revenues. That is why I wrote the book. I was just reviewing it. It turns out it's the 10-year anniversary of the book. So thank you for giving me a chance to reread a little bit. Unfortunately, so much of it is still relevant. I was saying 10 years ago, we have to get that number up. It has not grown very much, in part set back by the pandemic. And I would also like to share that just 1% of women of color reach 1 million in revenues. So they have even higher hurdles to climb. And really, this is for three reasons. Women tend to have less access to cash and capital. We're not as good as raising capital. Maybe we don't know where to get that capital, don't know how to get the bank loan, afraid of raising money from venture capital or angel investors. The second reason is fewer role models. We just don't have as many role models of women who have built successful businesses. And the third reason is lack of access to affordable coaching. So many men have built multi-million-dollar businesses because they had incredible mentors and coaches. And women are not socialized as much to invest in ourselves in that way. I find that some women are more comfortable buying $1,000 handbag than investing $1,000 in a coaching program. I spent about $50,000, 50, on my own professional development over the course of about 5 years. And of course, that paid off. I built a multi-million-dollar business. I raised 6 million in venture capital, and I sold my business, which was a language teaching business for young children, Little Pim like my last name, Pimsleur, to our largest partner, and then became a coach and now helping other women reach 1 million in revenues.
You've just released your second book, and I mean, not it's been some time, but
Couple of years.
again, you talk about scale and think big now. The now, is it significant in the title, as in the environment the world is right now? What is the context of that now?
Yes, so the second book is called Go Big Now, and it grew out of conversations I had around the first book, $1 Million Women, which, came out on 5 continents. I was speaking in Australia and the UK, did not make it to India, but I hope I will. I had 2 little kids at the time. They're now grown, so a little more flexibility. But I noticed in all of these rooms, whether it was 500 women or 1,000 women, when I asked, what do you think is the hardest part of getting to 1 million in revenues? Is it mindset? Is it skill set? Or is it networking? All hands went up for mindset. It was so interesting. And what I take that to mean is that, I'm sure you all know this in your own lives, women are so smart and so driven and so determined, but we can get in our own way. And that's where the mindset piece comes in. It's not our fault, it's socialization. Most of us are not raised to think of ourselves as, I'll be a multi-million-dollar CEO. I know I had a lot of mindset issues when I wanted to get my company to 1 million in revenues. I had to do a lot of work with a mindset coach who I talk about in the book, $1 Million Women, who really helped me overcome some limiting beliefs that I had about who I could be and what I could do. My parents were academics. I didn't have a role model of a successful entrepreneur. I didn't even know one woman who had built a multi-million-dollar business. So it was very hard to imagine myself in that role. And through these mindset shifts, I was able to get that goal in focus and just start working towards it. And that's really the hardest part. So the second book, Go Big Now, shares 8 essential mindset practices that successful CEOs, leaders, politicians, Olympic athletes are using to set big goals and overcome any obstacle to achieve them. And I think that's more relevant than ever right now. The obstacles just keep on coming, don't they? So we just have to have more tools to overcome them.
So we promise that we will buy and read the book, but can you talk about those eight sets?
Sure, yes. I'll just share a couple that have been very useful for women in my coaching practice. I've been a coach at Million Dollar Women for the last 9 years, and we've helped a few thousand women reach that $1 million mark, which we're very proud of. And 1.6 million have either read our books or taken our classes or read our blogs. And so what we've noticed is that the two mindset shifts that have the biggest impact are overcoming limiting beliefs and rewriting your story. So I'll just explain those two very quickly. We all have just two kinds of beliefs: empowering beliefs and limiting beliefs. And the empowering beliefs are the ones that allow us to do the things that we love and are good at. Maybe it means you raised your hand to get a promotion at your job, or you took the leap to start a business. That's because you had some empowering belief that you could do that. But the limiting beliefs are the cause of whatever you don't have in your life that you would like to have. And until you address those, they will continue to sabotage you. For instance, for me, it was the thought, well, my parents were academics. What do I know about being a multi-million-dollar CEO? It just wasn't part of my identity. And that was a limiting belief that I had to move aside before I could join organizations to help me become that CEO. I joined an organization that had thousands of successful entrepreneurs the world over. It was called EO. I wrote about that in the book. And it was 85% men. I was one of the only women in the room. I wouldn't even have dared to join an organization like that before tackling those limiting beliefs. So that's the first thing, is work on that. And I have a 4-step process for overcoming a limiting belief that I share in the book Million Dollar Women and in Go Big Now. The second thing is to rewrite your story. We get a little stuck in our stories because we've been telling them to ourselves over and over again. And this does have some connection with the limiting beliefs, but there are exercises you can do to rewrite what your future holds and then take steps towards reaching that. I always love the quote, "Your past is not your future unless you decide to drop anchor and stay there." And sometimes we drop anchor without realizing it. We're just so stuck on this story of, okay, I started one business and it failed. So what could I possibly do now? Or, every entrepreneur has scars from having tried things that did not work at all. In my case, I remember right after the pandemic, I spent $20,000 on YouTube ads, and something about the way the company I hired set them up, they set them up all wrong. And it made us $0, right? So you could decide right then and there, I don't know what I'm doing, this isn't working, but you have to just pull up that anchor. The past is not the future. Try something else. Now I'm going live on LinkedIn. I have thousands of followers, but we all have those scars.
What has been your lowest point in business?
It was probably when I was trying to raise the 6 million for my company, for Little Pim. It's very difficult in the US to raise money, I think all over the world as a woman. Just about 2% of venture capital gets invested in women-run businesses. And so I was out pitching to rooms of men, mainly men coming out of Wall Street. That was just, I don't have a finance background. My father was an academic. Again, I didn't grow up hearing these terms. So it was really like learning a foreign language. And I got to a place where I wondered, will I be able to raise this money? Oh, I think I might have frozen. I think I'm frozen on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you still hear me? There we go. I think
Yeah.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Sorry. We were talking about the lowest point in business. So I was out trying to raise this capital. I had a team of 10. They were working so hard at my company, Little Pim. And I remember I came back to my office and I had just come from a meeting where I did not get the money. We were running very low on cash. I knew I couldn't keep this team if I didn't raise this money. And when I walked in, I saw my head of marketing and my head of finance like hunkered down, trying to figure out our holiday specials and what to sell the products for. And I felt so moved that they were working so hard to achieve what, after all, was my dream at the end of the day, to help millions of young children learn a second language at the age they learn best. And it was in that moment, Sarita, where I was like, I have to do this. It's not if, it's when. I have to find a way to raise this money. And I just redoubled my efforts, even though I was exhausted. I had probably pitched 200 times and gotten so many no's. But it only takes one yes, one or two yeses. And I did raise that 6 million and was able to grow the company into a multi-million dollar company. But I'll never forget that day. I'm just thinking, thank you. I heard some applause. I appreciate that. Um,
Women have, again, a male entrepreneur told me this. He said, women identify a lot more of them in their business, and therefore they have a hard time letting go. So it's not something distant. We almost embody ourselves in our business, so it gets very personal. What is your view on that? Is that a strength or a weakness?
There's a couple of things women do that we think are a strength, but are actually a weakness. So I'd like to address those. And in rereading Million Dollar Women, I noticed I was already talking about it 10 years ago, but I now have a TEDx on this very topic. My TEDx talk is called Ditch Grit and Go Big. So that's a little hint of one of the things that we think is an asset, but can become a liability. So I'll start with grit. I think as women and as people of color, actually our community is 30% people of color, and we've talked a lot about our socialization. So whether you're a Caucasian woman or woman of color, we're socialized to think, really to believe that if you work twice as hard as the men, that is the path to success. I was taught that by my mother, and so many women I know were taught the same thing. Unfortunately, that might get you to the table, but it's not going to get you to the corner office. Meaning, at a certain point, you're going to have to ditch this identity of like, I'm the grittiest person in the room. I can multitask, I can do everything, I can, fix the broken links on my website if you're an entrepreneur, and do the billing and do the sales. And this is actually one thing that holds us back, is that we're so attached to this identity of being gritty that we don't go out and get the other skills that we actually need to go big. And those skills are things like networking, fundraising, delegating and outsourcing. We teach women in our programs to do what we call their genius work, which is usually about 5% of what is happening in the company. 5%. So if you're sitting in the audience listening, maybe challenge yourself to think about, what is the 5% of what we do in my business that only I can do? It's my genius work. And then how do I delegate and outsource the rest? Because this is what men do. And women were like, no, I'll do it all. I'll do my genius work, and I'll send out the invoices and I'll do the social media and I'll do it all. And that is keeping us small. So it's really about developing those skills of delegating and outsourcing, and not just focusing on the grit.
So I mentioned failure a couple of times through the day, and in India, especially for women, failure can cause a little bit of acidity, because again we look at it so much more emotionally. How do you? What are the tools to look at failure dispassionately, if I may say?
Yeah. Well, that is one of the tools I teach in Go Big Now. It's called Mind the Gap. Because if you've been to London on the tube, you know that they're always saying, mind the gap, right? And what that looks like from a mindset perspective is, you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control the meaning you make of it. And that is up to you. And it's one of the key skills we need as an entrepreneur, because if we jump to conclusions about what things mean, we can often get into a negative, almost stuck state, right? Oh, well, that means they think I'm stupid, or they didn't answer my email. I'll never forget, I wrote an email to someone who runs a community of very successful women speakers and authors that I'm part of. And I'm a bit intimidated because there are women in there who, are way more successful than me. So I wrote her an email and she didn't answer. And so I was a bit hurt. And then I re-upped it. I wrote it again. She still didn't answer. So now I started having this feeling of like, oh, well, maybe it's because I'm not as, successful as the other women in the group. And I had this whole story going. But I asked my assistant, hey, as a last idea, can you just take that email I wrote, forward it from you, and see if it went into her spam? She wrote back within 1 minute. Oh, thank you so much for writing. This was in my spam. So this whole story I built, and then we got on a call. We had a lovely connection. She's a dear friend to this day. But had I not done that third act, right, of let's just check this story, I would still be stuck in this negative meaning. So we have to be careful about the meaning we assign things, and we do it in a split second. And so that's why I called that mindset tool "Mind the Gap," because I'm inviting you to create a little gap, no matter how tiny, between what happens and the meaning you make of it. And can you at least ask yourself the question, is this the only possible meaning, that I can make of it? Or is it possible that this is a great learning lesson? Or, I'm doing a deal right now, a big multi-million dollar deal, and it started slowing down. And I realized, maybe this isn't even the right deal for me. Maybe it's slowing down because there's a better partner out there. And it gave the person I'm negotiating with a chance to do a couple things I didn't really love. He condescended to me a little bit. He made a suggestion that I was like, do you think I was born yesterday? No, I don't want to do that. But by the fact that we slowed down, I'm getting to know him differently. And so I could say, oh no, the deal is slowing down. But minding the gap, maybe this is giving me a chance to find a better partner.
My last question is, you mentioned you're a mother of two, and how did motherhood impact your pace as a business person?
Well, my kids have always been a big part of my businesses. They're very supportive of me as an entrepreneur. I love modeling for them the passion about what I do. And I'm happy to report they're 17 and 20. They both have a lot of passions of their own that they're pursuing. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have such an opportunity to show our children what it looks like to do something you love and really go for it. My younger son wants to be a singer-songwriter. And while that's a very tough profession, he's going to just completely go for it. And he is. And I love that. And he said, if it doesn't work, I'll go back to school and I'll do something else. So I think we need to reframe how we talk about women and entrepreneurship and motherhood. It is such a gift we can give our children to show them what it looks like to work hard for something you love and to control your own destiny. Even on the days it's not going well, I am my own boss. And I've seen so many friends get laid off, suffer from, ageism in the workplace. They hit a certain age, they're out. This is my company. No one can ever fire me. And if I want to go on a field trip with my child or take off 2 weeks to take them to Europe, which I've done every single summer since I've been an entrepreneur, I don't have to ask permission
I
for
said
that.
it was the last question, but I have one more. Women tend to
Sure.
have businesses which are an organic extension of their passion. And there is data to support it. I don't have it at hand. Men look at market. If the semiconductor industry is doing well, they will jump in, for example. Do you see that as an impediment as to why businesses run by women don't go big?
Well, I think we tend to start businesses to solve problems we have. That was the case for me. I started a language teaching business for young children because I wanted my children to learn French, and there was nothing on the market for them to learn French. So we tend to go into things where we wish this product or service existed and it doesn't, so we build it. Now, that's fantastic, but I think where we need to go from there, and what I'm hoping is going to happen over the next 10 years, is that we take really seriously learning the skills we need to scale, because that's where we're getting stuck, is we just stay doing everything, not outsourcing, not delegating, not learning also the financial language. When I went out and raised venture capital, Sarita, I spent 10 months studying this dance. I think of it as a dance that entrepreneurs and venture capitalists have been doing for a century. And I wasn't going to come in and redefine the dance. If they're all doing salsa, I can't come in and do tango. No, I have to learn the salsa. So I did. And by the time I was in those rooms pitching, I could speak the language. I knew what a discount was. I knew what tranches were. I knew the difference between margins and gross margins. So I think for women, we have to really embrace that. We want to change the whole culture. We would like business to be more women friendly in so many ways. And we will rebuild it once we have more power in there. But the first step is to get in there and to just learn those skills so that we can be at the table and be decision makers and get that financial freedom that our mothers and grandmothers and ancestors have fought so hard to get us to where we are today, where we even have the opportunity to start a business. What an incredible privilege.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful having you with us finally. And we'll definitely get you to India. And thank you once again. Thank you. It's really early
What
in
a
the morning
joy.
there.
I
Yeah.
would love to be in touch with all of you. And if you want to find me, just go to millionwomen.com or follow me on social, and I'll follow you back.
Yes. And please buy her books. They're really seminal. They changed my life, that's for sure.
Adi Lakshmi.